sometimes I can like get behind a mic and I don't know what type of energy I'm gonna push out or where it comes from. Trip me out sometimes.
Welcome to Unit Radio.
All right. That is the angelic voice of Rivers Cuomo, lead singer extraordinaire of one of my favorites, Weezer. Off the early to mid-2000s release, Maladroit, or Maladroit, depending on your inflection. That is Burnt Jam. And this is the original Burnt Jam. This is Unit Radio. Thank you, of course, to everybody for tuning in. For those of you returning, thanks for returning. And for those of you just coming across me on your Thursday night dial, I do appreciate your consideration. I'm Brad Stevens. To start things off, of course, you know, it's always fun for me diving into old tunes like that. Listening to Weezer, of course, reminds me of being younger, because when I first started playing music and playing instruments, it was because of bands like Weezer and bands like The Strokes and all the bands that came out in the mid to early 2000s with "the" in the title. And even the Hives, to a lesser degree. Does anybody remember that Hives video where they were on, I think it was Letterman, and the lead singer has what looks to be like a complete meltdown? And I watch that now in retrospect, and I look at it, and it's like a complete cry for help. But I remember watching it early on when I was younger and thinking, what a rock star. That's horrible now looking back at it, because he was obviously heavily intoxicated, heavily under the influence. But those kind of bands were the ones that got me in. And Weezer, not a "the" band, but a band nonetheless. They did get me into playing rock and roll back in the day. So of course it's Thursday. We're rounding off towards another weekend. Of course, I hope everybody's had a good week. I've had an okay week. Been doing a lot of soul searching, all that fun stuff. Maybe that's why I played a little Weezer. Been thinking about songs that kind of remind you of specific times in your life. So you know, when you're listening to a song is kind of unique. A song is kind of like a smell. It's powerful, where it can really bring you back all of a sudden. You're brought to a particular place in time. It's really interesting like that. And I remember, so I started going through old tunes I used to listen to. So I'm going to bring a couple of bands in tonight that I haven't listened to in years, but I really want to, of course, get them on the radio. And that's going to be a lot of fun for me a little bit later. But, you know, I think about bands like Weezer, and then not even to a lesser degree, but to a different degree. Although I could never replicate and try to play their music, there were bands that were heavier, more complex, more psychedelic bands. So bands like Yes, or bands like Rush. Not things that I was able to personally replicate, and still, to no degree, I'm able to replicate. But there were bands, say, for example, like, say, Pink Floyd. And Pink Floyd had a number of records, spanning all sorts of topics, you know, like spanning all sorts of periods of time too. They didn't just have a singular style. Their style evolved, obviously depending on their drug dealer, is my guess. But they really, really, really did kind of evolve, I guess, over time. And they did have band members that came and went. Syd Barrett obviously left early on in the band. So, I mean, not only was he the story of Syd is kind of a huge influence on one of their biggest releases, which was Dark Side of the Moon. But more importantly, you know, they wrote sprawling epics. They wrote some of the original, you know, records that set the archetype for what a concept record is. So if you look at something like The Wall, I don't even think there was anything like The Wall. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and if I am, reach out to me at Instagram at UNITRADIO, UNITRADIO, and just let me know if I'm way off base here. But more importantly, it just felt like they kind of set their own style. And I mean, even before that, to a lesser degree, because at heart, no matter what you do, The Wall is purely a concept style record. And because of that, you know, what that means is that it's, I guess, I don't know, it's really obviously a concept song, a concept album, you know. But it's a story of, I think it's the story of a man named Pink, I believe, and Pink becomes a cog in the machine. He doesn't want to become a brick in the wall, so he I'm not going to get into it or try to begin to interpret The Wall. But Dark Side of the Moon, to like a lesser degree, is still its own type of concept record. And I've listened to it a number of times. And the reason I say it brings me back, and it's one of those records that really brings me back to a particular place in time, is the first time that anybody showed me Dark Side of the Moon was a friend of mine named Mike Powell. And he took me in a room with an old record player. And it was one of those record players that was built in to the actual unit itself, unit here on Unit Radio. It was built into the actual cabinet and the cabinet speakers. We sat out and we listened to Dark Side of the Moon on vinyl. And it was a great record. I remember thinking because there was no break, because it transitioned seamlessly from song to song. It just felt like two songs, side A and side B. And it wasn't until a few years later that I bought it on. I guess at that time I bought it on CD. And I've spent a lot of time exploring that record. It's a lot of fun, and it is a story of a mental breakdown, or a mental lapse, if you will. Which is made evident throughout the record by voices in the background going off, you name it. It's just at heart a very, I don't know, it's a trippy record is what it is, for lack of a way to put it. But I want to share with you one of my favorite tracks from that record. This is the last song off of side A, which I might argue is the best side. Side B is amazing and closes out incredibly, but I love side A, or side 1. And this is the last track. Let's see, do I have it even queued up here? My goodness. Of course I do. My gosh. I'm prepared. This is, I don't know what, it's not quite like the other sounds on the record, I guess. It's, I guess comparatively to most of it, which is sort of a rock opera, this is sort of just it's an instrumental. The story of it is kind of incredible. Allegedly, they brought in a lady who got paid scale, next to nothing, to do this. And would have never known that this was going to be something that may blow up, but got paid scale. And I guess because of that, she is now not earning the same royalties as the rest of this record, this being one of the highest selling records of all time. So again, off of Dark Side of the Moon, this is The Great Gig in the Sky by Pink Floyd, and you're listening to Unit Radio. I'm Brad Stevens, and we'll be right back.
Unit Radio is back.
For sticking around here, Unit Radio on your Thursday night dial. I'll be here till 10 p.m. I am Brad Stevens, and thank you again. That was brand new off their brand new, am I right? Brand new release, Science Fiction. And that is another one in the train of bands that just kind of did it for me early on. These were the bands that kind of got me into music, and I kind of truly look back at a lot of those groups and believe I don't know if I would have ever been as big a music fan, or if I had ever been into, if I had ever maybe even gotten into performing or getting on stage. It was only because of the rock stars that I saw in these amazing groups, and I could never understand, like, they were rock stars to me. Like, it was unbelievable. And, not that I couldn't possibly be a rock star. It's just that I'm here in the studio instead. Like, I'm busy doing other stuff. So, it's for someone else, I guess, to do. But, and again, you're listening to Unit Radio. Again, thank you for anybody who just stuck through the last few tunes there. Let's see, taking a look, we did come out of the breaks there. Of course, I did give you The Great Gig in the Sky off Pink Floyd's album Dark Side of the Moon. Excuse me. And then, of course, rounding that off just before the break, we had I Only Wear Blue from Dr. Dog. That is the Philly quintet that I love so dearly. I don't know if they were a quintet then, but they have had a lot of alternating members for Dr. Dog. For those of you not familiar, I have to recommend getting out and checking those guys out. And then just before we came back there again, brand new with Can't Get It Out. Interestingly enough, actually, that record just came out there, like I said, a few weeks ago. Dropped kind of unexpectedly. Apparently a bunch of the members of the fan club got a notification that something was going to be happening, and then I guess it was looking for addresses, and then a bunch of people got packages with a single album, allegedly with a single track that comprised the 50 to 55 minutes of the record. which is kind of a great way to release it, really. Apparently, the title on the disc was something to do with coordinates for, it sounds like some sort of plateau in the States. Devil's Tower, I think. And I'm not sure what state. Let me go ahead and check that out for you there. Let's do a little unit radio research. Devil's Tower. There we go. Apparently it's there we go. It is in northeastern Wyoming, everybody. So if you happen to find yourself in Wyoming, taking a look here, it was it's the plateau from the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, for anybody familiar with that. And actually only 1% of the 4,000 annual visitors to the monument actually climb Devil's Tower. So for brand new, they dropped out this new record. It came out of nowhere, took the world by surprise, and actually came in and landed at number 1 on its debut week on the Billboard Top 10, which is incredible. Again, that's like an amazing feat. We should all be so proud. Truthfully, it didn't last so long. Now, while it landing there in the first place did set its own record, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that record turned out to be, what was that? I believe it was from when Deja Entendu was released in about 2003 to about when this record came out earlier this year. That's a 14-year gap. Apparently, that had been one of the longest gaps between number 1 records since David Bowie did it, from, I believe, 78 up to 2016 with Black Star, which was a 42-year gap, I believe they said. That math can't be right. Regardless, it seems like it was destined for success with a release like that. But again, unfortunately, things don't always go as expected. So by week 2, it actually had dropped, and actually bottomed out, I should say. Dropped would be a nice way of putting it. Let's check it out, because I know it went down, I believe, as far as, I want to take a guess, I think it was the 90s. Which, when you're at number 1 on your debut week, that's not a great follow-up week. Like, I don't know, I'm actually not very well versed in the music industry. I have no concept of how it works, especially at this level. But yeah, it looks like it actually, oh boy, it came in. Yeah, and it was a 43-year gap for David Bowie from 73 to 2016. My apologies. It actually fell to 97 in its second week. And by the third week, it fell off the charts entirely. So with 2 weeks, Science Fiction is the shortest lasting number 1 album in Billboard history. Unbelievable. And that was, of course, Can't Get It Out. I actually love the track. I think it's great, to tell you the truth. And again, one of those bands, it reminds me of driving around with my pal Tristan, who evidently seems to be busy tonight, but normally does like to chime in and be a troll. He is unfortunately living a little too far away for us to have too much fun together. I do miss you dearly, bud. I think he should be actually graduating soon. And actually, speaking of convocation, so I'll say congratulations to Tristan if you have already graduated, or a pending congratulations for your upcoming graduations, sir. And please tune into Unit Radio. I hope you're enjoying the show from out there. And of course, these episodes nowadays are going to start being shared on our YouTube page. So of course, for everybody out there, I would recommend checking out YouTube. We're going to have episodes of Unit Radio. I'm going to start sharing the link through, I've got it right here actually. I'm going to start sharing the link through the Instagram, and again, that's Instagram at Unit Radio. But the name of the account again online is going to be Unit Radio. Right now, we've got episode 1 up. I'm hoping by the end of the evening, episode 2 and possibly 3 will be up, and that'll hopefully bring us up to speed. I believe, does this put us at 5 or 6? I have no idea. Either way, to anybody who's been tuning in that long, my condolences to you, honestly, but really thank you from the bottom of my heart for sticking around. So again, brand new, reminds me of Tristan. Thank you. And we do have, like I said, a convocation that I guess happened here today. I do want a special shout out, of course, out there to my pal Reach, as it were. And Rachel's out there right now. I guess she out there convocating. So good for her. And congratulations to all you other Memorial University graduates. As a former Memorial University graduate myself, someone who was subjected to the absolute nightmare that is walking across the stage, that is being subjected to the leering eyes of the public and just generally everybody, great time. The perpetual fear that you will fall, the not knowing how to kneel, the not really getting to practice. And I think that's the thing that really gets me about an event like Convocation, is it's something that's such an honestly considerably pivotal moment in a lot of people's lives. To be honest, it was more important certainly to my parents than it was to me, admittedly. Not that it wasn't important to me, but at the time maybe I didn't truly give it the value that maybe it may deserve. You know, it's a huge day. It's a massive, massive undertaking. You've completed a degree. You've completed a program. That's something to be proud of. And it's a day for you to get out with everybody and celebrate, which is really nice. And I did get out and celebrate. My family got together. We all spent some time together. It was lovely. But I didn't anticipate it. I kind of anticipated being just another day or just a boring ceremony. Now, I was right. I didn't enjoy the ceremony. Now, I don't want to take away in any way. Memorial does a fantastic job at putting off what is one of the craziest ceremonies I've ever been to. It's like something out of Harry Potter. It was great. And they really, really give it their all. The year I did it, I got to see a provost. She came in, and it was her very, very first event that I guess she was officiating or sitting as a member of the university with. That would have been Noreen Goffman. And then she spoke, and it was great, and you got to sort of see that, not so much a passing of the torch, but sort of her taking up of the torch. And that was really cool in a way, and I'm glad I did get to see that, you know, in spite of the fact that it was a long ceremony, and admittedly, it was a little slow. I do appreciate that it is something that I think a lot of people do need to go through. It's something that you need to be a part of. And I think, honestly, for people who don't go, I feel bad for you. I do feel you should probably get out there and you should probably try it. Try convocating. Try convocating with your degree, like as if that's not already your end game. But you should really try. And if you've never finished that degree, I would highly, highly, highly recommend getting out there and just realizing that it's something that you could potentially do, because I'm a dummy and I did it. And as I've said before on this show, it took me, 9 years? It took me 9 years to finish my undergrad, which apparently by normal standards is a considerably long amount of time. You know, again, my condolences to my parents more than anything. But it really was a gratifying moment. It was a really special moment to be able to walk across that stage, to be able to shake the hand, take the degree, know you did it. If you're lucky enough to do it in time, you do it with your peers. Everybody's walking with you, and you all get to celebrate together, and you get to cheer on your buds. You get to cheer on your pals doing something special. I don't know. I look back kind of fondly at it. For a day that, not that I was dreading it, but for a day that I wasn't necessarily looking forward to, it actually turned out to be pretty cool. And it sounds like such a PSA for convocating, but I believe it. I do believe it, and I honestly think it was an uplifting thing to know that all the work that I was doing wasn't underappreciated. That at the end of the day, that there was an end game. At the end of the day, there was something there that I was able to go, you know what? I worked really hard, and I'm getting recognized for that, and I feel recognized for that. And that's very important. So convocating, yeah, I love it. I always see the light blinking over here every time I'm in the studio on the phone. There's a phone just right over there. There's a message that nobody's checking, or maybe there's always a message there and everybody's like, someone's always checking and it's just me. Maybe I'm the only person who does a radio show who doesn't check the messages. I hope it's nothing important. If it is, just call my cell phone. If it's really important, you just know my cell phone, I'm sure. Am I right? So I'm going to keep going. I'm rolling with the trend of old tunes. Or not even old tunes, just tunes that remind me of being, of yesteryear. Let's say yesteryear. How does that sound? I know that's a little antiquated, I believe. This is someone that maybe, speaking of antiquated, his style definitely is not, let's get real, it's not popular. It's never really been popular. And this is not a guy as a performer that's ever had a string of hits. A lot of people know him, you recognize his name, and I play him every week here, and I love the guy. I've seen him a couple of times. He's a great live performer, but more importantly, he just seems to be a great human being. So I like to support him however I possibly can. From, his 2003 to 4 release, that'd be Retriever. This is Ron Sexsmith, and he's coming in with From Now On. You're listening to Unit Radio, and I'm Brad Stevens.
Unit Radio is back.
All right, everybody. That, of course, is Chuck Berry with Memphis, Tennessee. And I believe actually that song was covered several times over by so many people, my gosh. But that was Chuck Berry's version, and that one to me is second to none. We had Rhonda chiming in there as well. She said, yeah, it sounds like it's off an LP. And I wish it was, but that is just the graininess of old school rock and roll, I guess, just leaking out here on Unit Radio on your Thursday night dial. 93.5 CHMR is, I'm very pleased to be here. I'm pleased to be broadcasted across the World Wide Web, of course, at www.mon.ca/CHMR. Or maybe you're catching up with this on the YouTube page there, and that'd be there, Unit Radio, all one word, or at our Instagram, maybe. Maybe you're just checking out our fantastic stories. Maybe you want to take a look at something, maybe one of the photos we're sharing, one of my, just something weird that I found. It's basically an extension of myself. I found out recently it's actually really common for young people nowadays to have 2 Instagrams. Can you believe that? I can barely manage one Instagram. Like, I'm barely cool enough to manage one Instagram is what I should say. I don't have nearly enough material to have to just continue to keep it going and keep people interested around the hook for 2. I did hear about a young guy who lives here in the city. I don't have really any more information than that, other than I know he actually runs an Instagram of photos that he finds. So not photos that he's taken, not photos that he's even been privy to being a part of, or even photos that he's borrowed from photographers that he knows. Just photos that he's found online, and in most cases, he apparently just puts a few filters on them or increases the contrast a little. Just tries to make it look a little fancy in some way. And yeah, from the sounds of it, he apparently made so much money that he had to fill out an American T4. And I'm pretty sure from what I got of it, he grossed somewhere in the range from $65,000 to $70,000. This guy's 17 years old, for the record. So he's legally able to work, but in my mind, shouldn't legally be able to make that amount of money. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a jealous old man who barely understands the internet. So we got, in Canadian music this week, we had good news, we had bad news. So I'm going to give you, I guess, the good news first. Let's take a look here. This is one of the maybe real feel-good stories to come out of this week. It would be Hey Rosetta actually coming out and announcing, after having several issues and several complaints about their ticket system, from myself included. I'll be honest, the website was terrible from the moment the tickets went on sale. It began to crash. It was a brutal server issue. Again, I can't pinpoint who was at fault. I can't blame this ticket company, because obviously this is an event with a lot of interest. There's a lot of public interest in people wanting to go see Hey Rosetta, and understandably so. I get it. That's what they want to do, and they want to get out there and they want to check out one of the greatest bands probably to maybe ever come out of St. John's and maybe Newfoundland. I love them, and I wanted to send them off in style, or at least see them off in style. I wasn't able, I guess, really to get tickets to the Friday night show, so I'm going to go to the Thursday night. So hopefully for anybody there, I'll see ya at that Thursday night show. Unfortunately, that means that some of this may end up being maybe a best of that I might put together or something if I can slap together something out of 10 episodes to fill a couple hours there. But more importantly, what they've decided actually is, after fans crying foul, as it were, they're actually taking a look, and they're gonna move the show on the Friday night, at least, to Mile 1 at this time. So, right now it says that they're going to be reaching out to people just to advise them, to give them the option, do they want to still go. I'm going to be honest, considering the fact that it is across the road, it's a very nice alternative, a very nice option for them to offer. But at the same time, if you were going to go to that Hey Rosetta concert, I kind of feel like this maybe wasn't a thing that's going to stand in your way. Like, this isn't a roadblock between you and seeing Hey Rosetta. The fact that you now have to cross the street, which is, again, that's fine by me. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. But unfortunately, there were a lot of people out there who didn't seem to get tickets, and that's a little heartbreaking. There was a lot of frustrated people across social media. I know if you're like myself, my Facebook was bombarded with it. And my condolences, honestly, to everybody, because for me, I only ended up with tickets because I was with a group, and we were all collectively trying, and one person managed to get tickets. So, and when I say big group, there was 2 of us, but 2 of us were trying, and she got tickets and I didn't. But one of those tickets became mine, so that's great. So, more importantly, you have to remember that maybe with something like this happening, it is maybe possible that alternate or additional tickets are going to be added to the venue. Maybe even tickets at the door in the interest of fairness, Maybe that's the best way to do it. If doing it in these online systems leads to things like the allegations of bots coming in and buying up all the tickets, or even the allegations of just illicit vendors or vendors of ill repute, scalpers, as it were, coming on in and stealing up all the tickets and selling them at inflated prices on Kijiji or buy and sell inevitably. But that's going to happen. That happens everywhere. And I guess maybe this is a great response for a small band or an internationally massive band like Hey Rosetta to do. It's a big move for them, and I got to say it's really nice. So not that any of them are ever going to hear this, but big shout out to the guys from Hey Rosetta. That's awesome. That's very cool of you, just to make sure that people are able to make it to the show and tune on in and come and check it out. So that's the good news. That's the good news in Canadian music this week. So then sadly, the not so great news, and I don't think this is going to be any surprise to anybody. Yesterday, of course, we lost one of what will probably go down as being one of maybe the most prolific Canadian singer-songwriters and frontmen. What was interesting is I read an article, to try to explain who he was to somebody outside of Canada is probably in a way very difficult. I personally never had to do it, but I read an article that addressed it in a way where they kind of said, there's no American equivalent to this, that if all of your favorite frontmen of all the top 5 American bands died, it still wouldn't have the same level of grief and outpouring and connection that a band like the Tragically Hip had. And unfortunately, this week we lost Gord Downie. It breaks my heart to say. And unfortunately, he was very, very ill for some time. Amazingly, he still managed to get 2 solo records out after, of course, the final Tragically Hip album, Man, Machine, Poem, got released. Thankfully, that made it out. But he did manage to put out both Secret Path, which, of course, was, I believe, the story of Canny Wojak. I hope I'm getting that right, my goodness. Yeah, absolutely, there, Channy Wenjack, my apologies, goodness. A young boy from one of the First Nation residential schools who actually died in 1966 trying to return home. And he kind of told that heartbreaking story. I'll be honest, not to in any way be morbid, but I did assume that was actually going to be his final record. And then, of course, a few weeks ago he surprised us all by announcing that he was going to release an album. He began work on in early 2016. It was Introduce Yourself. He's 23 tracks on this record. It's a last solo record he put out. It just got announced and released. And each song is apparently about a person in his life, which is, in a way, a complete, just a representation of everything that Gord Downie was. Gord Downie, I live with a couple of, I don't know which one of them would be the biggest hip fan, but they would both probably argue that each of them might be the biggest hip fan. And to see their reaction, to see the way that they talked about it, was really beautiful. I mean, the way that they spoke about this man was not like a simple singer-songwriter that had passed away. I mean, I spoke a few weeks ago about the outpouring for Tom Petty and how I was a little surprised because I didn't realize how much Tom Petty resonated with people. But with something like Gord Downie, I realized why Gord Downie resonated with people, because Gord Downie wasn't just a Canadian singer-songwriter. Based on the way I listened to these 2 guys, my 2 roommates, talk about him, he was a singer-songwriter of Canada, representing Canadian values, representing what Canadians were feeling and thinking, and what they wanted to do, what they were feeling. You know, one of the biggest tracks, of course, that everybody always comes back to was, of course, 50 Mission Cap, and that, of course, is a classic tune. That one, of course, started off there, of course, with those classic lyrics. Bill Barilko disappeared that summer. He was on a fishing trip. The last goal he ever scored won the Leafs the cup. They didn't win another until 1962. the year he was discovered. And, of course, that's the story of Bill Barilko, who, of course, scored a magical goal, of course, that took them to the Cup. I believe 11 years later, they won the Cup again. And that, of course, was the year that his body, I believe, and the plane crash that he perished in was discovered. He was heading on a fishing trip, if I'm not mistaken, to northern Quebec. And believe it or not, to say that he's a Canadian icon is one thing, but last night at the Toronto Maple Leafs, not only are those lyrics emblazoned on the inside of the players' lounge, but though Bill Barilko's actual thing from the ceiling with his number, the saying that he was there, was actually lowered as a just as signification, just to say thank you, Gord, just to speak and say this is what you represented, that you made us mean something, you made our moments mean something. And I think maybe that was what was so special about someone like Gord Downie, is that oftentimes in life we have moments that we go through that we consider to be mundane, we consider to be normal. A lot of times our culture and our past gets mowed over and we learn very little. I'll be the first to admit I know very little sometimes in my family tree. There's family members that I'm just reaching out to and just getting in contact with now in my life that I never met before. But to be someone like Gord Downie, who was perpetually interested in every aspect of Canada, every inch of Canada, was just magical. And there really was nobody quite like him. And it sounds a little sentimental to speak about somebody like that after they pass. It feels a little obvious to speak about someone like that after they pass, but there was something different and special about him. And I guess I can't put my finger on what. I don't know if anybody can really put their finger on what it is, but I think my two roommates said it best, is that he just loved Canada. He just loved this place. He loved everything about it. I mean, the lyric that always stuck with me, and of course I'm from here, so whatever, but the lyric that stuck with me was, there's Mistaken Point, Newfoundland, there's Moonbeam, Ontario. These are places I've never been and I've always wanted to go. And just a man who almost explored and toyed with and had fun with the Canadian map, had fun with the Canadian landscape, and not only just the landscape and the geography of our country, but the history of our country, who made the histories and the stories of the country his stories, and the stories of the Tragically Hip. That's why you'll never see a band like the Tragically Hip. I mean, I hope you will. I don't know. It feels daft to me to say that. That means, I mean, it sounds like, I feel that kind of sentiment can never be recreated in people. Unless I know that's not true. I know as a fact from when I was a teenager, the way that growing up I felt listening to Kanye West is the way teenagers nowadays feel listening to someone like Kendrick Lamar or Chance the Rapper. And I can see that and I can feel it. And it may not be something that maybe I understand immediately, and it may be something that I have to warm up to, but it's inevitably something that I come to realize, and it's something that I've come to terms with. So, I mean, even the Tragically Hip, I had another friend who described it like the Tragically Hip was like that weird uncle you had. And you kind of, he seems a little fun, and he's always sort of having a good time, and people seem into it, but you don't really get it. And then you kind of hear New Orleans is Sinking, and you're like, that is a cool song, and you end up kind of wanting to play along, and then you dig a little deeper, you go into Road Apples. Thanks again, Rhonda, for introducing me to Road Apples out of your CD collection there. And then Trouble at the Hen House. And maybe you dig into their newer stuff, maybe you got into something like We Are the Same, which was what maybe really got me into it as an adult. Or some of their newest ones, like Now for Plan A, or Plan B, I believe. I can't remember. But, or even their oldest releases. I'm a Werewolf Baby. Shout out to John Jarvis for getting me into that and, introducing me to that particular round of tunes and that generation of the hip. I mean, he told me about a time when he remembered going to see them in small bars with next to nobody there, and even then, they were just incredible singer-songwriters. They obviously developed. I mean, just a couple of years ago, they did their Fully Completely tour, which is arguably one of the greatest Canadian albums to ever be released, with a ton of hits, some of their best music. Believe it or not, very little of them actually ever made it anywhere other than, say, alternative charts, and certainly none of them made it outside of the country, which in itself is almost I don't know, almost seems a little sacrilegious because it is a band that I love. It is a band that's close to my heart. But off that record, this is actually the opening track, and of course, for anybody familiar, this needs no introduction. This is the Tragically Hip with Courage for Hugh McLennan. And this one, of course, is going out there to John Jarvis out of New Brunswick. And again, Unit Radio, my name is Brad Stevens. Stay tuned, we got plenty more. The human tragedy, or the human irony, consists in the necessity of living with the consequences of actions performed under the pressure of compulsions so obscure we do not and cannot understand them. And that's from Hugh McLennan's The Watch That Ends the Night. That line, of course, inspired Courage for Hugh McLennan. And that's from the Tragically Hip there. Frontman, of course, Gord Downie. We just lost there yesterday at the, I believe, let me take a look there so I don't get that wrong. Let's take a quick look. Thank goodness I did have my fact sheet all good to go. Yes, of course, Gord Downie there passed away at the age of 53. And that's one of my favorite tunes, actually. That's the one that I guess that, like I said, one of their old tunes that got under my skin earliest, but it was one of their later records, actually, that came a little tiny bit further on. That would be, I guess, that would be We Are the Same. So I guess, I mean, everybody maybe has their own story of how they got into the hip. And actually reaching out right now, we've got a listener out there in Radioland, actually, Amanda. She's basically reaching out just about the Gord Downie. We may not have feel like we known him personally, but we all sort of felt like we did. I know I felt like I did too. I really did. I honestly felt like it was someone who maybe understood the fabric of our nation. And he was someone who spoke for a lot of the injustices and spoke of the injustices and was never silent and didn't wish to be silenced. I knew his role, he knew his part, but he spoke when spoken. Or rather spoke, I guess, when speaking was necessary. I guess he understood our country maybe in a different way or on a different level than maybe most of us ever will. And maybe that's why, in a way, I say that there really is no one quite like Gord Downie. And maybe there won't ever be anyone quite like Gord Downie. So I'm going to do a song off of the record, of course, that got me into the Tragically Hip. Thank you, of course, to my friend Jeremy Moore out there in Croatia land. Hopefully he's listening to Unit Radio, or, of course, listening to the recap here, because I know it's probably late as heck over there. So, of course, Jeremy got me into We Are the Same. And I believe it was a 2007 or 8 release. I know he had it on vinyl. And, of course, one of my favorite tunes from that record, I guess, really was... it's a suite, for a lack of a better way to put it. It is 3 tunes sort of sandwiched into one. They all have their own sort of individual names, and I don't know what those names are. But I do know this name, or rather this song, as The Depression Suite. So this is The Depression Suite by the Tragically Hip off of We Are the Same. And again, this is Unit Radio. My name is Brad Stevens, and this is a long one, so hold on. Stay tuned. We've got plenty more where that came from.
Unit Radio.
Fourth position.
That is, of course. What am I saying, of course? It's not like it's an obvious choice or anything. That is Wolfpack. And of course, again, that is Corey Wong off The Beautiful Game, and you are listening to Unit Radio. Again, I am Brad Stevens. Thank you so much for tuning in. That's one of my favorite songs. You know something? I got to be completely honest. I came across that one from YouTube. So I got to give it up to YouTube on that one, because YouTube was what put that all together for me. I came across it in just scrolling on through. And you know how YouTube nowadays just sort of makes everybody's videos autoplay all the way through? Well, I got on an autoplay loop, and that is where I was led. I was led down the primrose path. The wonderful, wonderful world of Wolfpack was introduced to me, and that's V-U-L. Let me take a look, make sure I'm getting this. V-U-L-F-P-E-C-K. Yeah. So make sure you check those guys out. Very funky, and in checking it out, to be honest with you, they do a lot of live tours, and it seems like they sell out almost instantly. So I gotta recommend checking it out. It seems like it's just a rhythm almost just like a Motown R&B rhythm funk band. And of course, before the break there, that was the Depression Suite from the Tragically Hip. And again, of course, the Unit Radio condolences, of course, going out to everyone in the band, the Downie family, everyone, of course, really deeply affected by that. And a lot of people I know really deeply hurt by that. So I am going to try to pick things up, and we're going to get into a little upward swing here. And we're going to get into our next segment there, the local flavor segment. I did say I was going to have a cool, snappy stinger for it this week, but I still don't. I still don't have one. I said I was going to do a soundboard, too. The best I got was doing that little Kendrick piece at the beginning there, so I don't know. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, this week we're going to go and do a little bit more local flavor. And of course, I dug back into a band that I had seen a couple of times here in St. John's. Introduced to me actually by my good friend Jordan Lawrence. And to be Jordan, of course, of Mooch fame. And Mooch has appeared here a number of times in the local flavor segment. But he introduced me to a band, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're from his hometown. But these guys, this is Cujo. And this song is, the only way I can describe it is infectious. And I believe it's off their self-titled release, Cujo. And this is called My Trick. And again, you're listening to the local flavor segment here on 93.5 CHMR FM. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. Unit Radio. Once again, off their self-titled album. That is Cujo with My Trick, here on your local flavor segment here for Unit Radio. From here in St. John's, or at least the guys played a lot of shows here in St. John's for sure. Either way, I kind of got introduced to them, so thank you, of course, again to my good pal, Jordan Lawrence, for making Unit Radio a little more interesting and a little more diverse. So I'm really happy for that. And thank you, of course, to people out there in Radioland for sticking around. Again, I'm Brad Stevens here for Unit Radio. So we'll stick with the theme of the evening here. We'll move right along to the next local flavor tune. Shunski. Let me take a quick look. I've got a good one here for you. This one actually brings me back quite a few years. And staying on tune there, of course, with the songs that remind you of a specific time. So I've got a moment in time that I can remember. I remember hearing this song when it first got released online from my pal Ryan Taylor. And this particular EP that he put out had a lot of great tunes on it, but this one was the one that stuck out, and I'll never forget the first moment I heard it live, which incidentally wasn't until years later when this group, Sunny Trip, was playing one of, I believe, if not their last show, or announced last show for sure, indefinite last show. And they played this tune. This one, of course, I guess maybe had been done in multiple iterations, but I always loved this particular iteration. It's from the Distractions EP, which I guess, according to Bandcamp here, it looks like that it actually launched as of December 2011. So I've got a particular moment in time that's sticking out for me when I'm standing in the second row just behind a couple of bobbin heads at the levee, and you've got two dueling guitars and two voices wailing, and I may never forget it. It's one of the standout moments of going to shows here in St. John's. So for you folks, I want to share off their Distractions EP. This is Sunny Trip with You Might Be Right. And you're listening to Unit Radio. I'm telling you, that one takes me right back. And I don't know what it is. Well, I do know what it is. That's Sunny Trip there with You Might Be Right off the Distractions EP. This is Unit Radio. And again, I'm Brad Stevens. That one takes me, like I said, to a time and place that is so hyper specific. And speaking of hyper specific, let's take a look. I got someone reaching out here saying they feel like a teenager in the 70s crowded around the radio, smoking stolen cigarettes, listening to the Cool as Hell disc jockey. If I'm the Cool as Hell disc jockey in that analogy, I'm flattered. I don't think I am. But just in case I am, I'm flattered. We're going to take a really quick break because we do have to do a quick PSA here. I got a quick read, and we'll be right back. Stick around there for Unit Radio.
Unit Radio is back.
And that, of course, actually Played out last week, but I had to bring it on back there from a local outfit, Coward. That was Oh What Can I Do? And that's off of the King Rat demos there. I don't know, it's a singular track, I guess they did. I don't know if it was just a demo once off, but they do have another release there, and make sure you check those guys out. cowardcrew.bandcamp.com. And their other release there, of course, to check out, it was a split that they did, actually came out there, it looks like back in 17. Oh yeah, that was back to September 27th, 2017. So yeah, just a recent one there. Looks like it is, in fact, there is no description, but we do have Gravy, Chad, Arn, and of course Foosh there. So make sure you check out Coward, guys. Again, Unit Radio here. I'm Brad Stevens. And, of course, thank you to everybody who's been sticking around this entire evening, or for anybody who's just stumbled along this journey with us, a special thank you, because you have no idea what you're getting into. If you've been here the whole time, you kind of have a feel for it. I don't know. Do you ever really get a feel for it? That's kind of the real funny thing about this show, is that I honestly thought by now that I'd have it all figured out, and I remember saying on the first episode, I don't know what this is, but it'll make sense, and it's all going to come together eventually in the end, and it did not. And it's not that it didn't come together in a bad way, it's just that it didn't come together in I still don't really know what it is. Is that really a bad thing? I don't think so, but, it's a fun journey. And if you're on it with me, hey, the more the merrier. And tell your friends, of course, about Unit Radio. Make sure you follow me on Instagram there, @Unit Radio. And, of course, feel free to reach out to me anytime there if you've got suggestions, comments, concerns, requests. If it's within reason, I want to make your dreams come true and make it happen for you on the radio here. I want to play the jams that you want to hear, especially if it's something to help me out here with the local flavor segment. So again here, that was Coward. Let's get into another one. This is actually a favorite of mine. I did play this band previously. This is The Times with their big and final release there as of August 2014. This was from Car Songs. Their lead singer-songwriter, actually, Jeremy, did reach out and actually funded a set of strings from an orchestra, a small, I guess a quartet of strings, a string quartet, to help round out a couple of the songs on this record. And it's most notable in one like this. This one is called Right Now, and I'm going to be completely honest, I kind of think this one sounds like a Bond song, and I'm okay with that in every way. So again, Right Now, from Car Songs, The Times, Unit Radio. Stick around. I do think it sounds like a Bond song. I really do. That was The Times off of Car Songs. That is Right Now. And again, this is Unit Radio. Again, we're going to play the last local track here for local flavor. This one, I've done this band before as well. I've never done the track off their only self-titled release there. Not only self-titled, but only and self-titled release. And sadly, first and last record. From Pre-Raphaelites, this is the Pre-Raphaelites with Foley Mountain. I wonder where Foley Mountain is.
Foley Mountain Radio is back.
When that one came out about, I guess maybe just a little over a year ago. Felt like a little birthday gift for me. That was off Psychedelic Swamp, Dr. Dog with Advertise. And this is Unit Radio with Brad Stevens here, about to sign off for the evening, at least until next Thursday from 8 p.m. until 10 p.m. Make sure you return or tell a friend, or make sure you check out some of the reruns that'll be up on YouTube there. Make sure you search for all one word Unit Radio, episodes 1 hopefully through 5. I'll have them up as soon as possible. Right now 1 is available and ready to go. And also reach out to us, of course, there again at Unit Radio, all one word, on Instagram. So I'll try to keep in touch and try to make things a little interesting there during the week, at least between shows. But more importantly, thank you to you folks for reaching out to me, making me feel listened to, or making me feel like this is not just a waste of time. But thank you very much for sticking around. I'm going to be honest, I have a CD here. I hope this is the sound that I think it is. Maybe. Oh, it is. Oh, thank gosh. This is Joe's Head from Kings of Leon. This has been Unit Radio, and I'm Brad Stevens. Thank you so much for sticking around, and we'll see you all again very soon. Namaste!